All right, hello everybody. So today we are going to be going through some of the dynamics between masculinity and femininity that I see in movies, focusing a little bit more on men, just because I'm a man and I think I've studied a little bit more about masculinity, but focusing quite a bit on the feminine aspect as well, and just how this dynamic has changed over time, the different ways that they are feeding their, agenda upon what men and women should be or shouldn't be. And so basically, we have an epidemic of weak men. Um, there's a lot of content out there describing this. The first time I encountered it would have been probably 6 years ago. I was watching Jordan Peterson, and I think he had a video that was like it was either why women love weak men or the opposite, why they hate weak men, why where do weak men come from, blah blah blah. Or really he was just analyzing the psychology of what a weak man is. um, Not confident, not able to make decisions, um, you know, just kind of in the background, not standing within, not having any presence whatsoever. But that's in the past. That's just something that I wanted to bring up. And then of course we have the scientific background of this, which is you're not the man your father was or your grandfather was. It's an article you can look up talking about how testosterone levels have changed over time. And why that is, I have my own theories. I don't think it's really much of an accident. There are theories out there that say, oh, well, there's less need for testosterone because of the type of society we live in. Well, I do think there's a little bit of truth there. The type of society we live in is not conducive to manliness, maybe, or it really is conducive to manliness in women. They've just completely flip flopped everything around that you could possibly think of, and they're trying to create women that are men and men that are women, or to be the same thing. But ultimately, it's about promoting both the disconnect from feminine and masculine for the respective sexes. And just to make that clear as well, I'm not a person that says, oh, men need to be just men, women need to be just women. I'm all about integrating the masculine and the feminine within myself. But in doing that, I don't think you can ignore the physical reality of your body. I think trying to manipulate that into being all the same thing, which is what I see, the mainstream doing, is a very dangerous. And I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at that being dangerous. I think the most obvious one is, the how sad most of these people are in this whole social justice movement. For me, it's very hard to have fun around these people. They normally don't like comedy unless it's a very specific type of comedy. Of course, they like making fun of the opposition, though. There's never anything wrong with making fun of the oppressors, right? But the minute you try to bring in anything to do with race, gender, retarded people, any, 95% of things are off limits when you're talking to these people. And there's a lot of explanations that I've been given over the years about why are trans people so depressed. Why are the energy fields of a lot of these people just so constricted and eggshells, and you can see this walking down the street. I mean, it's mostly intuitive for me at this point. I used to research all this stuff, but I didn't give up. I just said, for me, it's so obvious. For me, a normal human interaction is very easy to have with a normal human being. Now, I know this is all very abrasive. I've tried to cover to push it down a little bit in the past, but at this point, it's all guns blazing. And look, I'm always nice to people when I see them in public, but this is my belief behind the scenes. This is the real core of what you're seeing. This is my truth. So let's just get down to it. What makes a person, a consciousness, a soul, a spirit really? It's not about happiness. It's about purpose. It's about driving, and becoming something. In my opinion, again, this is all my opinion. I believe consciousness is about growing. So, for me, I want to understand my physical aspect of the body I am incarnated here with, and then the spiritual, emotional. These are the most basic ways of describing the spectrum of your being. And so on an energetic level, which is really, it's all about vibration. So the physical is just one vibration. You're sitting, on Earth here. So it's all within the same spectrum. And so that's why it's so important to identify your physical body as a vibration. What types of thoughts and energies and foods and people and environments agree with your physical body, and so that's what I think we're really getting divorced from. But I'm just taking so many tangents here. I could talk for infinity about the things that I've already mentioned, but I just want to get down to brass tacks here, and talk about men and women in TV shows specifically, but I'm also going to go in movies, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about sports, and then maybe some exceptions, and then I'll wrap it all up. So again, I've already mentioned there's an epidemic of weak men. One of the drivers is the media, the TV and film media that's coming out, and that's the psychological training aspect of it. That is how they, train your mind to start acting certain ways. So there's the physical aspect of what they're putting in the food, water, air, and then there's spiritual aspects, other things as well, and those things are going to physically change you. But if you resist it on a psychological level, it's going to be a different outcome. And so they want to put it all together. And by they, I'm not going to go through that right now. I have a good idea of who I think they is, and that's on a spiritual and a physical level. If we're talking about spiritual energies, we're really just looking at vibrations again, and how these energies want to distort what I view as, connection to God, source consciousness. If we're looking on the physical level, we're obviously going to look at the cabal, we're going to look at the banks, we're going to look at the corporations and how they are interconnected, how they became interconnected over time. And there's swaths of research you can go in on that. You can study economics, which is what I did, but you can study the media, you can study infinite things. And so again, this is the psychological aspect. How do shows distort masculine feminine dynamics between men and women? How do they get men and women to hate each other? How do they just skew all of these things up? And so I'm going to do some benign examples, some that are just like, okay, well, it's a weak man, it's a woman that's doing XYZ, but it's not really that big of a problem. And then I'm going to go into the hardcore examples where it's just hardcore. And let me just preface this all with this. So where did I put this? Okay. What do I like in a strong female or a strong male character in a movie? It's not that I just want them only to be a man or only to be a woman. That is a more traditionalist way of viewing the world. I want them to have, or through the course of the movie, to integrate masculine and feminine aspects. Okay, and so what I see in movies today is not that they are integrating, they're just consistently totally divorced from their feminine or from their masculine, and the only thing that matters in the movie is the goal at the end, getting back the ring, getting the girl, or killing the bad guy, right? So it's not as much about the actual character development as it is the process of getting to the end of the physical goal. But the inner character of the person does not change as much. And so that's a big problem, because for me, what matters way more is the development of the hero character, man or woman. How they develop over the course of the film, how they learn, etc. So I'll get more back to that. So let's just start with the first movie I was watching where I really just this thought popped in my mind. I've known about this for a long time, but I just felt like I should do a video on it. I was thinking about the movie Get Smart with Steve Carell and Anne Hathaway. This is your classic weak man, stupid man. He by accident he does cool things. But she's the badass. She's the director. She is the masculine presence in that film, ultimately. Steve Carell, he's really not feminine or masculine like too much in that film. He's really just nothing. He's just a random piece that is being guided by this strong female character, right? So I have nothing against strong females, but to me, this movie is, again, putting into the minds of people that Anne Hathaway in that movie is what women should be, okay? What wasn't there of in that movie? There wasn't much caring, side. It was strength, it was overcoming, it was smart, it was creation, but there wasn't a lot of harmony. There wasn't a lot of care. These are the feminine aspects. Whether you want to just say women are this, but these are the feminine aspects, the yin and yang. These are the universal truths that I follow, and I'm trying to integrate those aspects as well, to be clear. And so let's just keep going down. I looked up what are the 100 most viewed shows in history, or like, right now, whatever. It was the first IMDb list that I could find. And I just started going down and looking at a couple of them. And I think I listed 8 here, which I think almost everybody knows. And I'm just going to talk about them a little bit. So the first one I saw, Parks and Recreation. I mean, that's actually a really interesting case study to think about, because you have the Ron Swanson character who is, supposed to be the strong man. But I have a lot of problems with that character. And I'll talk about those. But let's just start with, Leslie Knope. Obviously, she is the doer in the show. She gets things done. The men in this show are extremely weak. Andy is totally weak. I don't know the names of the guy that likes vegan food, but he's super weak. I mean, he's a very interesting archetype we could talk about. He's like the Californian vegan weak man, but still exercise stereotype. I don't know what to call that. I should come up with a name for it. And then you have the other guy who's always just like sitting in the background, like kind of scared to share his opinion, having no strength whatsoever. Kind of like just, he has no presence whatsoever. And again, well, not again, but this is what, like, they've taught us to like in terms of comedy, is there are certain things that are supposed to be funny. There are certain things that you've been trained to see as funny, and so whether it's a man or a woman, but being stupid, is like supposed to be funny, rather than being smart and creative and coming up with a real joke that might be incendiary, but it's, in my opinion, is creative. There's a lot of comics of past that, and like really a lot of this great comedy is observing facts of human history and nature in the mind and communicating them in a way that people can feel free to actually think about it, right? people don't feel free to think about certain things anymore. It's like the thought police, because it's like, supposedly dirty. But even in the 90s that was going on. But when you have comics coming in the 2000s, like a Patrice O'Neal, like a Dave Chappelle, like a George Carlin, like a Bill Burr, and all the greats, of course. I don't even want to name them all. Those are just the first ones that came to mind in terms of commentary on men and women. They presented subjects in a way that allowed you to think about it while also having fun. But anyways, we're talking about Parks and Rec, I guess. So again, we have this dynamic of Leslie Knope, who is really a control freak. I don't think anybody would dispute that. Perfectionist, who doesn't seem to, ever connect with. Well, there's no real men in the show, so who would she even connect with? And she's a hard worker, and very competitive too. So these are masculine traits, in my opinion. I'm gonna be honest. Aubrey Plaza is the best example of a real feminine character in this show. She actually has some of the qualities. She has a little bit of that harmony in her, as weird as that might sound. But let's get on to the Ron Swanson. If we're talking about the masculine aspect, he has this archetype, right? He's the libertarian. Now, when I was growing up, of course I was a libertarian. I hated the state, and I still think the government probably shouldn't exist, but at least in its current form. But he is embodying of the stereotype that they're trying to teach all non-libertarians or just Democrats and Republicans of what freedom is really about, because he's all about freedom, right? So they take some of the good aspects of freedom, no state, right to bear arms, hunting, whatever you want to say, but then they always add in the bad. Like, Ron Swanson just has this disregard for human life, which he does. He doesn't really give a shit about anything other than freedom, no government, blah blah blah, and I like watching the show. I do like to see that, but ultimately I know that in people's minds they're simply being trained to view that as just funny, and that's stupid, and Ron Swanson's really just a crazy guy, but at least he's funny, and blah blah blah, right? So that, that's the way I view this Ron Swanson character. All right, next show I have, which actually isn't the worst show, is Grey's Anatomy. Obviously you have George, who is a pathetically weak man, and I think I've watched almost like 2 seasons. I hope he dies as soon as possible. Probably won't happen, but whatever. George is pathetically weak, but the rest of the men in the show are just regular psychopaths, which is whatever. I don't really have a big problem with this, but again, there's no authentic, there's really not much authentic masculine or feminine going on. The women in this show are very work-centric, very work-focused. They do, put in some of the passion and with the sex and everything, they show some of these dynamics. But ultimately, it's a very dark, it's a very drama-heavy show. Of course, this is what we love, drama. But, this show could be worse. I do enjoy it in some respects. But, again, and I'm not telling you not to view these shows. I'm just trying to create a paradigm so that we can understand the messaging that's within these shows, so we can enjoy the show if we choose to watch it, but not let that mental programming happen in the same way. Rather, we can start to notice the ways in which they're trying to program and just release that and enjoy the show just as some drama, which, hey, I don't have a big problem with. I mean, maybe I should. I don't know. Something more to think about there. Not really much more I want to say on Grey's Anatomy. But my main point again there was that where is the really strong man? They're really just all psychopaths, keeping lies and things from each other, and just working all the time, disregarding family and relationship troubles. So none of these are good examples of men. And I'm gonna get later into what I like to see in men. What are good examples of movies? And there are some recent movies that do a good job. I didn't think of any, but I think they're out there. I've watched a couple. Okay, next. Game of Thrones. I actually think Jon Snow is a pretty good character. He is definitely a little, weak, I would say. Weak in just one respect, though. He's very strong in many respects. But in terms of his resolve, it's a little weak. But the nice thing about Jon Snow is that over time he does change a lot, and he develops into a king, quote unquote. So I actually do think there are some good things here, and not only that, but there are a lot of truths in this show. There's a lot of accuracy, but the accuracy is within the dark or shadow elements of masculinity and femininity. There's not a lot of brightness or authentic dark light dynamics or above below dynamics. So it's just something to watch out for. If you want to understand shadows, because especially in this time period that they're covering, there's a lot more. That was a lot more not accepted, but it was just present more because it was less civilized. So more authentic primal things coming out. So it's a good way to view this show, in my opinion. So it documents dark femininity super well in terms of the Dragon Queen. Why am I blanking on her? I keep wanting to say Cersei. Whatever. But the Dragon Egg girl, I've watched most of Game of Thrones just to make things clear. So what I see in terms of this is, while it documents this stuff well, people are now embodying that instead of taking it as a warning of what you can become when you let this despair and hatred bottle up inside you. You end up destroying an entire city, and killing so many people out of rage and hatred. And so there is an authentic expression here. But it's now I see the mainstream idea of what a woman should be is take over, destroy, and bring things in for yourself. Get your own, girl. Go get yours. You don't need a man. Blah blah blah. And I'm not saying you do need a man. I'm just saying these are the types of things that are being implanted into the brains. And I don't even know what's being implanted for men now that I think about it. I see so much messaging about what women should be doing, but they don't even really talk about men. They just present the man in the weak fashion, and then it just naturally gets imbued into us also with the other things, the food, water, air. So all these elements coming in, just naturally creating a weak man. And no man is, men aren't strong enough to stand up and say, no, this isn't the type of woman I want in my life. I don't have a problem coming up here and saying that when I see most of these women on TV, I don't want any of them in my life, especially in terms of a romantic relationship. I find it all quite disgusting and divorced from what I like, but that's that. I think you have to be strong enough to speak on what you really want, and be able to accept hatred for it, because I know a lot of women feel this way about the men in the world, and so I don't want them to be afraid to speak up. So I want to be out here telling what I think is the truth, is my truth at least. Okay. I've watched a lot of this show. I was actually surprised to see it on the top, but The 100. I'm a big dystopian fan, so I love all these shows that deal in dystopian stuff. I actually just started watching last night. Resident Evil is brand new on Netflix. Very dark, very dark. But I was enjoying it. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm just a dystopian fanboy, I guess. And I do kind of like to keep up to date with what they're releasing, just so I can get a better glimpse of what they're trying to train into our minds. Anyways, 100. Another example of toxic men and women. I've actually watched a lot of this, and I do like it in aspects. There are certain characters that develop over time and become more loving, become more in touch with their natures. I think the best example in the show is John Murphy. He's by far my favorite character. But I think the main characters of Bellamy and Clark are the most abhorrent and terrible people, and little to no character development. They're always just killing people and doing what they can to save their people, over and over again. And John Murphy's not like much better, but over time he at least, I think there's a lot more character development there. And like I said before, that's what I want to see. I want to see the development. I don't care if they're bad at the beginning. How about at the end? And I haven't watched the whole show, but I think I've watched at least 4, 5, 6 seasons of it. I mean, a lot of this show. I mean, Clark has been a psychopath the whole time, and she is a very stark representation of a strong woman that's getting her own, but she, in my opinion, you could say Maddie's an example, but she's more of a father to Maddie, in my opinion, than a mother. So she's a very masculine character, or you could say she's a dark feminine as well. But I don't see any really care or harmony, and it's hard. I get the environment they've set up in this show is very dark, and so it's hard to have these positive aspects, but again, this is what people are bringing into their minds, mostly unconsciously. This video is already so long. I think I should not talk about these last ones. I mean, Orange is the New Black. Do I need to say any more on that? No. Big Bang Theory, 0 powerful men, 0 real men. Smartass and a couple, incels, basically. Modern Family. That's more of a case study on men that don't develop. The old man with the young, hot woman, and the weak man whose wife has to take care of him. House of Cards I thought was an interesting one. Again, a very dark representation, but some accuracy there. So now let's get to the positive portrayals. Let's get to what I've liked, and these are mostly 80s movies, I'm going to be honest. But I do think the best representation by far is Star Wars. The original Star Wars, now 4, 5, and 6. I think they're amazing. I think Luke and Leia and Han are amazing characters. I think they develop amazingly. I think they embody their physical masculinity and femininity, and I think they develop their spiritual masculine, feminine in very powerful ways, both of them. That's just, I think that's a great case study. I love Carrie Fisher. I think she does an absolutely amazing job. And so we can contrast this with the last 3 Star Wars movies, in which, I mean, was Kylo Ren not the weakest boy? I mean, for me, and this is just me, but I like a strong Sith Lord. Because if I'm a Jedi, why would I want to be fighting against a stupid little boy who has no development whatsoever, who just cries to his helmet of Darth Vader like it's an idol? it's a pitiful character. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little worked up over it, but oh man, I was just so disappointed by these new Star Wars films. I meant to be bringing these up on the monitor. Oops. Oops. And yeah, wow, I just realized I meant to be bringing all these up on the monitor. You've just been watching me in my chair this whole time, but that's okay. So where was I? Yeah, so Kylo Ren, I mean, he's just completely weak, and he doesn't really develop much. He doesn't develop into a strong man at all. I don't even know what he develops into. He dies at the end for... Spoilers, sorry. He dies for her at the end, and then I think they kissed. Did they not kiss? I don't even know, but it was the worst 3 movies maybe I've ever seen, especially considering how great the first 3 Star Wars were. And the prequels, I honestly thought were okay, not great, but I think these Star Wars movies are a great way to look at it because they were so great at the start. They were so mediocre in the middle, and they were so bad at the end. So this is the progression. The first 3 were amazing. The second 3, I mean, you still had, good character development, I think, in the prequels. And then at the end, I mean, what character development was there? I really can't think of any. You let me know if you find any. I mean, really. Okay, so let's get to it. Okay, other examples. I think the Terminator series, very strong woman. And what do I like in a strong female character? Maintain the feminine side, so it isn't about a woman embodying only feminine. It's about them being divorced from the feminine in most of these current representations, and vice versa with men. The Lord of the Rings, I think, is pretty good. Lots of darkness, but still good development, especially last film with the Return of the King. The Godfather, especially Marlon Brando's character. Al Pacino's Michael, never really ascends, but Marlon Brando, his character, the Godfather, Vito Corleone, does, like, at the end of his life when he's talking to Michael, he says, "I never wanted this for you, Michael. I did what I did." He came to terms with his darkness, and then he did let it go, I think. I think that was really strong. Michael never really does. He kind of, just is what it is. But still a good representation of a shadow masculine with a lot of truth in there and accuracy as well. I think Indiana Jones is, not a ton of character development, but I think as a purely, masculine representation, it's a good film. And here's the thing, all these movies, especially Terminator, had an amazing woman in them playing strong roles. Society has been taught that any role where women aren't doing only man things, this is my opinion, in the vast majority of cases, or at least the majority of cases, any role where women aren't only doing man things is wrong, while men embodying masculine is also wrong. Okay? And so let's just start to wrap this up. This is about all I had on this subject, but I want to talk about the way we've seen a lot of women's sports, running narratives. The women's soccer team being the most prolific of these, but also a lot of talk of the WNBA and the pay stuff. I just wanted to think about, they're putting these women on a stage, right, for everybody to see. They're promoting these women, and these are very masculine. I don't think this is accurate, but I think it's partially accurate. One woman who left the WNBA said 95% of them are lesbian, and they hate on women who actually try to be women. or embody feminine concepts, rather. Now, I don't think it's quite that, but I do think that is culturally accurate. I believe that woman who said that, who was in the WNBA, obviously. And so, what aren't they promoting? What aren't they talking about? Well, they're willing to promote all these women, but they're not promoting more feminine, I guess, of course, and I don't love modeling, but modeling would be one of these. I don't even know what else they would be promoting. The point is they are promoting that, and they're really pushing, women to be men, but they're not going to talk about how, well, whatever. There's been enough said on men are better, stronger than women in sports. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but so these are being plastered as role models for young women, while other types of women are completely hated on. Any woman who decides to choose family over work. And I did also want to mention this. So why do so many weak men love anime? Because anime, I actually think, I haven't watched a lot of it. I've watched a couple anime movies, and I do follow Japanese culture in other respects. But why do so many weak people love anime? Because anime, it does have like strong men at certain points. It actually aims to have a very masculine and feminine. I mean, some animes I'm sure have distortions of this, but from what I've seen, there's a lot of like masculine, feminine, yin yang dynamics that are worked into anime, and greatness and heroes and strength, and there's some good messaging there. But from what I can tell, this is what I intuited, is this anime speaks to the fantasy in these weak men's souls of greatness and power, but they could never fulfill that. So they embody the lower vibration, needy, sort of creepy man image, which is all the weird shit that goes on in anime, which I don't even want to talk about. But there's a lot of weird shit that's just like socially totally awkward, and they become, these weebs that are totally weak. But I do think if you're a strong man, you can gain something from watching certain animes. I haven't watched them all, but some of them I've watched, and I watched this movie Jinro, which is from the 90s, an old anime movie, and it's kind of sad and dark, but I thought it was a really well done movie. I thought it was pretty accurate, masculine, feminine, whether it's dark or not, but it was pretty accurate. I thought that was good. So I think that's where I'm gonna end this video. I hope you enjoyed looking at my Google screensaver, or my Chrome theme. I think it's pretty beautiful, and I hope you enjoyed this. So I will talk to you later. I hope you enjoyed my shirt. Don't forget about the 5G, okay? The 5G zapping all of us. Don't forget about that, people. This is serious stuff. I'm actually trying to get rid of, as much as I can, the amount of wireless radiation that's in my space, but it's tough, man. I mean, I'm not going to get rid of Wi-Fi, right? But I'm never going to get a 5G phone, I can tell you that much. But even sitting around the computer, sometimes my energy doesn't feel as great. But anyways, that's enough on that. Maybe that's a video for another day. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll talk to you later, and God bless and much love. All right, bye.